Vlog number 137. A nice autumn day in Reno, Nevada. Actually, a Nevada day. I love the Nevada Day jersey. We've got the Henderson Silver Knights, the Vegas Golden Knights AHL affiliate, rocking today. Got to find a way to get one of those, if they're even on sale down there in Henderson. I'm not sure. But Nevada Day is always a holiday in Nevada. They don't acknowledge Columbus Day here, so that means people are off work. And I always wonder if that'll result in better poker games or not. Usually you'd think that it does, but no matter what the day is, holiday, weekend, weekday, whatever, you're playing with the same guys. So it is what it is. Recording this on a Friday. Typically I like to record on Thursday nights because I want to get started on the editing process Friday mornings, but couldn't do that because I got called into work, had to work about a 5-hour shift. And I still was able to get into Peppermill at about 7:30, so I figured, well, I'll just get a late start. I'll play for about a 4-hour shift and call it good. But I got in there at 7:30, and there's 2 full games going, and there's 4 people on the list. So I figured, well, with 2 full games, this shouldn't be all that long. All of a sudden, it's 10 o'clock, and I'm still not in the damn game. So I give up, and I decide it's too late to start. Not going to play today. So wasted day. No poker on that day, so extra work to do today. It's about 1 o'clock. There's already 1 full game with the list at Peppermill, so I never like to get into that game. So when I show up when the second game starts, hopefully that one will be a little bit better. We'll see what we can make happen today. I get into the poker room and the second $5 game breaks out on table 5 again, which I like. It's only 4-handed to start though, and the first hand comes and under the gun limps. I have Queen Jack in the big blind and make it 15. He calls. With 30 in, the flop comes slightly above average. Ace King 10, 2 hearts. I bet 15, and he calls. So it's 60 in. The turn is a great card for me. It's an offsuit 8. I bet 50, and he calls again. With 160 in, the river is another king. I never really put him on a king here, but I have to hope that maybe he'll pay me off with an ace still. I bet 75, he tanks and folds. But still, we get the day started off with a win. Next hand, I end up calling a $60 turn bet with a pair of 9s, opening into straight draw, and a flush draw. My opponent checks the river to me, and I check back, which was a good thing because he was trapping with top 2 pair. Every once in a while, you can get frustrating moments in poker, like what happened earlier this week when I called a $200 river bet in an attempt to bluff catch, and an unknown player said, "Good call. I just have 2 pair." And on that board, it was obviously good, but he was betting with absolutely no idea why. And the next hand is an example of how you can occasionally be on the right side of hands against guys like that. Playing 6-handed, we get a limp. And I have the 5-9 of hearts in the cutoff and simply overlimp. The button calls as well, and the blind checks. With 20 in, we see a flop of 4-6-7 with 1 heart. Check to me, and I bet on a decent board, making it 25. The button calls, and the others fold. With 70 in, the turn's the ace of clubs. I check, thinking that he's going to be calling with a lot of aces on the flop, but he decides to check back, and the river is the 7 of spades. I decided to take a stab at this thing with a bluff, and that was to get him off of a pair of 4s specifically. I did not think he'd be folding too many other pairs higher than that, so I figured a $25 bet would do it. I toss in the green chip, and he makes the call, giving us a $120 pot. I say out loud, 5-6 is good, because that's kind of what I figured he must have had. I table my 9 high, and he says, "Good hand," and MUCKS his. Yeah, 5-6 is good.
Well, I have some braces on. I finished.
This was one of those times where it was good the game was short because no other players noticed it. Eric the dealer did, but he's a pro, and he didn't say anything. And the guy mucked his hand immediately after calling the bet. No word on if he ever realized what he did or what he called me with. I always kind of felt that in my lifetime as a poker player, I was due to have that happen one time, where I'd bluff get called, and the guy misreads the board and throws the hand away. It had never happened before that, so that was probably my favorite $120 pot that I've ever won. Next hand, the low jack limps, and I have 9s in the cutoff and make it 25. An OMC in the big blind calls, and the limper comes along as well. With 75 in, we see a flop of ace, 8, 9, 2 hearts, giving me middle set. Check to me, and I bet it for 50. The OMC folds, stunner. The low jack calls, so with 175 in, the turn is an offsuit jack, and he checks dark. I bet 100 here, and he calls again. With 375 in, the river is an offsuit 5, and again he dark checks. I decide to bet $175 here, obviously targeting an ace. He tanks, and finally decides to call. Giving us a $725 pot, I show my hand, and he shows only the case 9 and MUCKS. We stay hot. The next hand, I have ace 9 of clubs on an ace high flop. I go runner for the nut flush, though all that did was actually kill my action because my opponent tank folded ace 7 of hearts face up to my $175 river bet. Then the guy who I beat with the 9s would look to recoup some of that money against me in the next hand. He opens 15 in the hijack, and I have ace king on the button and make it 50. He calls. With 105 in, we see ace queen 4, 2 hearts, and he checks. I bet 65, and he comes along. With 235 in, the turn is an offsuit 5, and I bet 110. He check calls again. So with 455 in the pot, the river is another queen. And now he bets out for $225. Now, this probably should be a call. But something I've noticed a lot in my game lately that I think applies to a lot of games, people bluff less on ace-high boards. It's just the way that it is. And against this particular opponent, that's something in particular that I've noticed applies even more. So I fold the hand. I didn't get a look, but later on he'd tell me that he put me on ace-king and didn't want me to fold. A recreational type player who calls himself Goodfella, who's never much action, limps under the gun. By the way, The Departed is way better than Goodfellas. When you're talking about Scorsese movies, I'm just pointing this out.
And I think if I was Sigmund fucking Freud, I wouldn't get an answer.
2 other guys and a guy who used to be great for the game, but's now an OMC, come into this pot as well, the OMC in the low jack over limping. I have aces in the hijack and make it 30. These 2 both call. So with 95 in, we see ace queen 10 hit the board. 2 hearts out there, and I bet 30. Under the gun calls, and the low jack makes it 105. He didn't raise pre-flop, which despite his newfound tightness, eliminates a lower set or ace queen out of his range. He could have a heart draw, but the most likely thing is king jack. So I decide to just call here. Then, Goodfella, under the gun, jams all in for 250. Now, obviously, I am not at all concerned about this. But the problem was, when it got back around to this OMC in the low jack, he comes right back over the top again, making it 500. And him and I are playing 800 effective. So he's committed over half of his stack. Now, as we've talked about before, a post-flop 3-bet is the nuts the vast majority of the time. And by an OMC, oh man, take it to the bank. So those were some of the things I'm thinking about. It also popped into my head, not that it's a deciding factor, that I know if this guy wins this huge pot after I call here, he's going to hit and run. You can guarantee that will occur. This is one of those times where I do think a lot of smart poker players might have different opinions. If I were to turn his hand face up and you were to see king jack, I don't even know if that would be an automatic fold for a lot of players, especially in a 3-way pot. But if you know he's got king jack, you should fold. And that's what I decided to do. Turns out, both of these guys have king jack. And I wasn't even thinking that there was a chance that Goodfella had King Jack. I thought he probably had a hand like Ace Queen and had some of my outs. Another reason that shifted me towards folding. The board runs out, and we don't see any aces, queens, or tens as it runs out, so I should be feeling great about this, right? Well, no, it ended up coming running sevens. So that was kind of tilting, but if the object of the game is to fold when you're behind, I guess I did accomplish it. I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for the fold, but had the board not paired, it would have felt like a particularly amazing spot to dodge a bullet. And by the way, he did hit and run despite only chopping that pot, though he left his coffee. Then I get aces again and raise to 30 on the button over 3 limps. Big blind folds, but all 3 limpers call. With 125 in, it comes 8-8-6, 2 spades. Check to me, I bet 40. Both check call, so with 245 in, the turn is a 7 of diamonds, and under the gun checks. +1 bets out for 75. Didn't feel great about it, but folding aces here felt a bit weak. Under the gun calls also. With 465 in, the river is a red 8. And now both of these guys check. So is this a value bet? My answer? Yes, if it's a small one. So I bet out for 45 here, and under the gun, mucks immediately. +1, who bets 75 on the turn, tanks forever in this spot, considering the smallness of the bet. But finally calls, and I felt like a genius at that point because I assumed that he was paying me off with the weaker hand, giving us a $615 pot. The bad news was he showed Queen 6 of hearts. The good news was this guy plays Queen 6 of hearts. So after losing back all of my profits on the day, I get aces again and somehow manage to not lose with them. But I don't get any action post-flop. The game starts getting a lot better, so much so that a guy who barely plays any hands manages to drag a 3K pot with a pair of jacks unimproved. It was a good game, but Marco from Trupoya, making a return visit, couldn't get into it and had to start off by grinding the $2 game.
Sir, are you capable of playing this big? This is big.
I do not know.
This is big for you.
It's the first time for me. I'm moving up in stakes.
I don't know how you can handle these
1
swings.
cent, 2 cents, I'm not here.
Middle position raises the 25 out of turn, which added a small wrinkle to the next hand. After he makes the raise, +1 limps, and then the raise stands because action doesn't change. The button calls, and I have pocket 5s in the big blind and call as well. Then this limper who we're talking about here springs his trap. But he doesn't spring it as hard as I thought he might. He only makes it 100. Which, in this game, is never going to get too many folds. Middle position and the button call. So with my set mining operation now taking place, I call as well. With 400 in, the flop is 975, 2 hearts. Bottom set yet again, and I check. The limp raiser bets out for 175, which gets everyone else to fold. I go ahead and make it 375, and he doesn't take too long before jamming all in, which I proceed, of course, to snap call. Amazingly, he had almost the exact same amount that I did, with $2,260 going in on the flop alone, giving us a pot of $2,660. The turn's an 8 of hearts, the river a brick, and he shows 2 black aces. So after losing with that hand twice, I end up beating it for the pot of the day. I win a few more hands, including one where I flopped a set of 9s in a multi-way $1,600 pot that I end up getting it in with local favorite Bugsy, a guy who I'm not trying to play hands against, and he's not trying to play hands against me, but he ends up having a straight draw and a flush draw. I have the set, we run it twice, and somehow I hold on both boards. So at that point, I was crushing and got involved in a number of hands against local legend Mr. Z. And the first hand worked out for me. I picked off a $75 turn bet and a $225 river bluff with just a pair of 8s on an ace-high board. But, well, this wasn't as good of a night as it should have been, because Mr. Z absolutely loves running big bluffs with the skinny. And in Reno, the skinny means deuce 3. So I opted to run a 4-barrel bluff with the skinny that ended up being a $1,600 pot against him. The problem was, well, he ended up having kings full. Flashing out. By the way, I am not sure why the hell the damn music is so loud out here in the parking lot all of a sudden. That's kind of annoying, but we book a win of a little over $2,100 on a night that I don't think I played all that well. Ran really hot, didn't play as well as I'm capable of, but that happens sometimes.
All right, for this week's question of the week, Pat writes in and asked me if I could name my top 5 Vegas poker rooms. So I kind of gave some thought to this, and I decided that if I'm going to do it, I have to include sort of one wild card room that you wouldn't necessarily expect in my top 5. So I'll put that room at number 5, and I'm putting in the Orleans. I've always loved that casino. Maybe it's just because I've always thought New Orleans was a great city. Though I do question naming it the Orleans and pronouncing it that way, because the way I understand it, if you live in New Orleans, you hate when people call it New Orleans. It's kind of like when you live in Nevada, you cannot stand when people call it Nevada. So I don't know about that part of it, but I love that casino. It's fantastic. It's a great, cheap place to stay that's a little bit off strip, and their poker room is just very underrated. They always have great action going in there. So if you don't want to be on the strip, I think the Orleans is a great place to play. Also the South Point I would throw into that same category. At number 4, I'm putting the Venetian. Like a lot of you, I hate the way that they tried to impede the progress of online poker in America. But what can I say? I just love that room. It's just great. I mean, everything about it. Just the atmosphere, the tables, the chairs, just the feel of the casino. I've just always liked, and the action's always been good. I don't like that they included the jackpot tax. They didn't used to have it. Then they started going hog wild with the promotions. But if that brings in more people, who am I to tell them not to do it, I suppose. I also just love the theme of that casino. Just Venice, Italy. I just love that. It's just fantastic. At number 3, I'm putting the Aria. I could also include the Bellagio in here. I think the two of them are kind of the same place, really. They're right next to each other. They're owned by the same company, and they have the same chips and a lot of the same players. But I'm putting the Aria at 3 for similar reasons. Love that casino. It's fantastic. Great vibe. Great location at City Center, not far from T-Mobile Arena. Action's always great. What can you say? At number 2 is the newest poker room in Las Vegas. That's Resorts World. As I said on a recent vlog, I think it sets the standard in all of poker for several things. The chips, the cards, the tables, the chairs, which are better than any other chairs, are the best of any casino. I love how the room is sort of off the main casino floor, a little bit out of the way, so you're never going to have any cigarette smoke and just less general traffic passing by that could be distracting otherwise. I haven't even seen the entire casino yet, but from what I have, I think it's great. So Resorts World's going to come in at number 2. You know what's going to be number 1. That is the Wynn/Encore. I still kind of miss the days where the room was at the Wynn with the green tables located right next to that Ferrari shop by the Wynn parking garage. That was more out of the way. The rate was also $1 less. So I kind of miss that room, but what can you say with their new room? I mean, it's just amazing. It's hard to beat in basically any way, but it's generally just the action that I've experienced there over many years now that's going to put them at number 1. I mean, it's just great. The games aren't always the best during the World Series of Poker, and maybe some of you will tell me they're hit and miss the rest of the time, but for the most part, I've always thought the action there is great and always just felt the most comfortable there. So Wynn Encore putting at number 1. That'll wrap things up for this edition of the vlog. Do me a big favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. It's great for the channel. Leave a comment down below, and if you want to improve your poker game, may I suggest giving CrushLivePoker.com a shot. I've been on there for over a decade. It's without question the single biggest factor in me improving as a poker player, and that has definitely led to this being the best year that I've ever had as a poker player. Click the link in the description below. You can get 25% off a basic or premium subscription for life just by using the promo code BENDEACH. We'll see you next time.